Something is happening in professional tennis right now that nobody fully predicted, and the more you look at it, the less it makes sense by any traditional rule of how this sport is supposed to work. There is a player, 20 years old, ranked, outside the top 30, never won a Grand Slam, never even reached a Grand Slam final. And yet when tournament organizers announce the schedule for the day, her match gets listed first. Not because of her ranking, not because of her titles, because if they put her on last, half the crowd leaves before the headliners even walk out. That is not a rumor. That is the operational reality of the WTA Tour in 2026. And the people running this sport are simultaneously thrilled and completely baffled by it. Her name is Alexandra Eala. And before we go any further, I need you to sit with something for a second, because the question at the center of this story is not, how good is she? The question is something far more unsettling. How does a player become the main attraction of a global sport before she has won the thing that global sports say you must win first? How do you become bigger than the champions without becoming a champion yet? And the deeper you go into the answer, the more you realize this isn't just a tennis story. This is a story about power, identity, and a shift in what fame actually means in the modern world. And it starts not in a stadium, not on a court, but in a country that was never supposed to produce a player like this at all. The Philippines is not a tennis nation. Say that out loud, and most people who follow the sport will nod, not because they're being dismissive, but because it is simply the historical reality. The infrastructure isn't there. The tradition isn't there. The funding pipelines that push talented kids from local academies to Grand Slam draws, those don't exist in the same way they do in Spain or the United States or the Czech Republic. Filipino sports culture is built around two things: basketball and boxing. And both of those sports have produced legends of almost mythological status. But tennis? Tennis was the sport you watched on television from a distance, something that belonged to another world entirely. So when a young girl from Manila started showing something that scouts described not as promising, but as genuinely extraordinary, the story was already unusual. But then something happened that shifted unusual into unprecedented. Rafael Nadal, 22 Grand Slam titles, considered by many the greatest competitor in the history of the sport, personally opened the doors of his academy in Mallorca, Spain, to this teenage girl. And if you understand tennis culture, you understand what that moment means. Nadal doesn't just hand out spots at his academy. He doesn't attach his name to players as a courtesy gesture. When he looks at a young athlete and says this person belongs here, he is staking part of his own legacy on that judgment. The tennis world paid attention. And then it waited. Because the Nadal Academy has produced players before. Talented players. Players who trained in the same system, absorbed the same philosophy of relentless baseline warfare and mental toughness, and then quietly faded into the mid-ranks of professional tennis, never quite breaking through. The skeptics were ready. They had seen this story before. They were fully prepared to file Alexandra Eala under beautiful prospect who didn't quite make it. And then 2022 happened, the US Open, junior girls singles final, hard courts of Flushing Meadows under the New York sky. And Alexandra Eala, this kid from a country that had never produced a Grand Slam champion of any kind, walks onto that court and wins, becomes the first Filipino in history to win a Grand Slam title at any level. The footage of the moment she won went viral instantly, but not just among tennis fans. Among millions of Filipinos who had never watched a single tennis match in their lives, who suddenly found themselves watching a 20-second clip on repeat with tears in their eyes without fully understanding why. And that reaction, that specific emotional response from people who aren't even fans of the sport, that is the first clue to understanding everything that comes next. Because what happened in New York in 2022 wasn't just a sports result. It was a representation event. It was a moment where an entire archipelago of over 115 million people saw their identity reflected on one of the most prestigious stages in global sport for the first time. That kind of moment doesn't just generate fans. It generates something closer to devotion. She turned professional, and what followed was the part of the story that gets glossed over in highlight reels, but is actually crucial to understanding who she is. She grinded, deeply unglamorous, often painful, far from the cameras grinding through the lower circuits of professional tennis. Opponents who were fully grown adults. Courts in countries most casual sports fans couldn't point to on a map. Wins that generated almost no media coverage. Losses that would have broken players with less resolve. She lost matches she should have won. She won matches she had no business winning. She kept working, she kept adapting, and at the Nadal Academy, they were shaping not just her forehand or her serve, but the thing that separates good professionals from genuinely dangerous ones, the capacity to maintain belief in yourself when nothing around you is confirming that belief. Then came Miami, 2025. And this is where the story stops being about trajectory and starts being about seismic disruption. She arrived at the WTA 1000 event in Miami as a wild card. That means the tournament itself had to give her a special invitation just to get into the draw because her ranking wasn't high enough to qualify automatically. Think about what that means. She wasn't supposed to be there by the normal rules. And then, round by round in a tournament featuring every elite player on the planet, she starts winning. Not scraping through, winning. Dismantling players who had been professionals longer than she had been alive as a tennis competitor. And then she ran into Iga Swiatek, multiple Grand Slam champion, former world number 1. A player so dominant over the past several years that opponents sometimes look beaten before the first ball is even struck. Alexandra Eala beat her. The moment the final point landed, the collective reaction online wasn't just surprise. It was something closer to disbelief layered with complete electric excitement. Social media didn't just respond, it detonated. Every major sports account posted it. Every tennis broadcast interrupted whatever they were doing to show the clip. And in the Philippines, it was past midnight and millions of people were awake. Watching on phones and laptops and televisions, and the noise from homes across Manila could be heard outside on the streets. She reached the semifinals, first Filipino in history to reach the Final Four of a WTA 1000 event, ranked outside the top 100 when she walked in, inside the top 100 when she walked out. And here is where we hit the question that actually defines this entire story, the one that makes tennis insiders slightly uncomfortable when they're asked it directly. Why, after that run, did her name generate more digital engagement than the player who ultimately won the tournament? Why, at subsequent events, was she drawing bigger crowds to her first-round matches than established top 10 players were drawing to their quarterfinals? Why is the WTA, an organization that has spent decades building its marketing around champions and rankings and trophies, quietly reshaping its promotional strategy around a player who hasn't won a major title yet? The answer has multiple layers, and every single one of them is fascinating. The first layer is pure numbers. The Filipino diaspora is one of the largest and most interconnected communities on Earth. Over 10 million Filipinos live and work outside the Philippines, spread across the United States, the Middle East, Europe, Asia, and beyond. These are people who maintain extraordinary ties to their home culture, who feel national pride with an intensity that is genuinely striking to outsiders, and who, when one of their own appears on a global stage, mobilize with a speed and coordination that social media platforms are still trying to fully process. When Eala plays, the engagement metrics don't look like a popular athlete has a big match. They look like a national emergency. Comment sections flood with Philippine flags within minutes. Hashtags don't trend in the Philippines. They trend globally because the community is everywhere. Streaming numbers spike in regions that don't traditionally have large tennis audiences. And the WTA, being an entertainment business that lives and dies on audience size, sees all of this data in real time and draws an obvious conclusion. This player is opening doors to markets we have been trying to enter for years and failing. She is doing it simply by existing and competing. That is extraordinary commercial power for a player at her stage of career development. The second layer is the Nadal effect, and it operates in a way that is almost invisible until you start looking for it. Nadal built his entire public identity on a specific philosophy. You chase every ball, you give everything on every point, you respect the game and your opponent completely, and you never, ever stop fighting. His fans, distributed across every continent, didn't just admire his results. They fell in love with that philosophy. They made it personal. So when they see a 20-year-old left-handed player trained at his academy, executing that exact same brand of relentless never say die tennis, something clicks emotionally. They see continuity. They see the values they loved in Nadal being carried forward by someone new. They adopt her without anyone asking them to, without any marketing campaign telling them to. And suddenly, Eala isn't just drawing Filipino fans. She is drawing millions of Nadal fans worldwide who feel an organic connection to her story and her style. That cross-pollination of fan bases is almost impossible to engineer artificially, and she has it naturally. The third layer is the one that is hardest to quantify but might be the most important. She makes people feel something. Watch her play a point where she is down match point and has no business surviving it. Watch her chase a ball to the absolute edge of the court, dig it up with a left-handed forehand that somehow not only gets back but lands inside the line, and then pump her fist and scream something in Tagalog that the courtside microphones catch but the commentators can't translate fast enough. You don't need to translate it, you feel it. That is a player who is fully, completely present in every single moment on that court. In an era where sports can sometimes feel curated and managed and emotionally controlled, Eala is raw. She is authentic in a way that cameras love and audiences crave. She is also, and this matters more than it might initially seem, 20 years old and still becoming. The greatest athletes in any sport have a window of time where their story is still being written in real time, where each match is genuinely unpredictable, where you don't know yet what the final version of this person looks like. That window is magnetic. Audiences instinctively feel it. They want to be there for it. They want to be able to say years from now that they watched this from the beginning. So while established champions carry the weight of expectation and the slight melancholy of a story that is already substantially written, Eala exists in this electric space of pure potential. Every match feels like a chapter in something that is still building towards something enormous. By early 2026, she reached a career-high ranking of world number 29. Highest-ranked Filipino player in the entire history of the WTA Tour, by a distance that isn't even close. She is competing in doubles simultaneously, pushing her doubles ranking into the top 100 as well. She is managing a schedule, a media presence, sponsor commitments, and the weight of national expectation, all while her peers in other walks of life are still in university. The pressure on her is genuinely unusual in its scale. An entire nation of over 100 million people carries her into every match. Loses feel communal. Wins feel like public celebrations. And she handles it with a composure that experienced sports psychologists describe as remarkable. Not because she shows no emotion, she shows enormous emotion, but because the emotion fuels her rather than destabilizing her. And this is the thing that brings us back to where we started, back to that unsettling, genuinely fascinating question about how you become the main attraction before you become the champion. The traditional answer sports gives is that you can't. That attention follows achievement. That the spotlight belongs to the people at the top of the rankings, the ones holding the trophies at the end of the fortnight. And in a mechanical pre-internet, pre-social media world, that logic held. But we don't live in that world. Fame now is not just awarded by achievement. It is generated by connection, by narrative, by the feeling a person gives you when you watch them compete. And Alexandra Eala, this 20-year-old from Manila, trained by the greatest fighter the sport has ever seen, carrying an entire nation's dreams into every match she plays, generates that feeling in volumes that have genuinely surprised even the people who run the sport she plays. The champions will always have their titles. Their names on the trophies will never change. But right now, in this specific moment in tennis history, there is one player whose name makes the crowd louder, whose schedule causes the internet to rearrange itself, whose story reaches people who have never once picked up a racket and makes them care about a sport they didn't follow yesterday. The whole world is not shouting because she has already arrived. The whole world is shouting because they can feel, with that instinct that precedes rational thought, that what is coming next is going to be something none of us will want to say we missed.